Hello everybody, this video is about Black Lives. Oh god! You guys just keep talking about like Black Lives Matter and then you like protest and then you cause traffic and then bro, like I'm late for work and that's just not acceptable. And then you guys just like, you're just so abrasive and it's like you guys protest. Why can't you guys just be like Martin Luther King, bro? Like, he was totally peaceful protest, chill, But you guys are just so, like, abrasive and loud. It's just like, I live in Los Angeles, and there are times that there's traffic at 10 p.m. on a Sunday night. Traffic is a given in this town, and it's a mystery to me that people are upset that their lives are being disrupted when a teenager like Michael Brown was murdered. Well, not just murdered, he was actually shot 6 times and was labeled a demon by the cop that killed him, Darren Wilson. Then there was a medical examiner not taking pictures of Michael Brown's body because he claimed that the batteries in his camera died. Then there were the police showing up with tanks that made it look like they were literally going to war with black people, going as far as throwing tear gas in people's front yards. Then there was the media and some of my friends on Facebook who suddenly had this insatiable need to post small riots when there were an innumerable amount of peaceful protests. If you're going to be upset about something, be upset at the reason these protests are even happening in the first place. Men and women of color are not only being murdered, but their families have to sit and watch while the criminal justice system conjures up an excuse on why it's their fault that they're dead. The definition of protest is a declaration of objection, disapproval, fuss, and I'd argue that a protest is essentially a cry for help. The problem with your frustration is that you lack empathy. I mean, if someone came up to you and asked you for help, what would you do?
Excuse me, ma'am. Excuse me, ma'am. Excuse me, ma'am. I'm sorry. I really need your help with something. Excuse me, ma'am. Ma'am, excuse me. I'm sorry, but I really need your help with something.
What's the matter, yeah? How can I help you? I would hope that your response would be the latter. Recently, I was unable to make it to a Black Lives Matter event, so I was encouraged to write a letter to Congress about the Black Lives Matter movement. I was really excited when I received a letter from Senator Dianne Feinstein. But as I read her letter, and her lackluster attempt at distracting from the real issues, it quickly became apparent to me that she was responding with what she thought was important. She did not address my concerns, nor did she answer my questions. She was so tactless that she didn't have the decency to spell my name correctly. Senator Feinstein was alive during the civil rights movement. She was alive when Miss Rosa Parks refused to get out of her seat, yet she still found it difficult to respond appropriately. Now, whether Miss Feinstein suffers from a severe case of amnesia, or perhaps she just doesn't care. Whatever the case, this illuminates the reason why we protest. And people, please stop using Martin Luther King as a way to put blacks down for protesting. Number one, he believed in protesting. Number two, history tells us that agitation is what moves the needle of change. And number three, Martin Luther King wouldn't have existed if there wasn't white supremacy, and he wouldn't have met his demise if a white supremacist did not feel threatened by him. His wife and his child were in the home when it was bombed. He remained peaceful. While protesting in Chicago, rocks, bottles, and bricks were thrown at him. He remained peaceful. He was the personification of peace and a heavy advocate for peaceful protest. And so am I. But if you aren't listening, or if you continue to perpetuate the exaggerated negative stereotypes about the black community, or remain ambivalent towards the current displays of police brutality, then there will undoubtedly be some people who will get louder. Okay, so I totally get all that. But this whole white privilege BS, hello, my last name is not Hilton. I grew up in Beverly Hills adjacent, aka the ghetto. And why do only Black lives matter? I mean, I'm white. I matter too. It should be hashtag ALTM. All lives totally matter. Babe, is my hair cute? Babe, is my hair cute?
It's cute.
I know, right? All lives matter implies that all lives are equally at risk, and that's just not the case. Black Lives Matter isn't a competition. It's not about who matters more. Black Lives Matter is about focus, not exclusion. And as far as white privilege, it doesn't mean that if you're white that you grew up in a mansion, drive luxury cars, and have never worked a day in your life. The definition of privilege is a special advantage not enjoyed by everyone. And if you're white, you definitely experience some special advantages in your day-to-day lives. Some examples of white privilege are not automatically being perceived as a threat. Renisha McBride, a black teenager who was in a car accident in the early morning, was shot on the porch of a house where she was seeking help. Her assailant, a Caucasian male, claimed it wasn't about race, but when he saw a black teen knocking on his door asking for help, instead of calling the police, he shot her in the face. White privilege is going to a school supplied with textbooks that not only represent your race, but highlights all your great achievements.
Hey, look what I found.
No. Leaving out the parts like when the Native Americans met Columbus, they were actually really kind, and he repaid them with genocide. White privilege is 32-year-old Raul Ramirez from El Salvador, raping a woman in her room and receiving the minimum sentence of 3 years in prison. Meanwhile, Brock Turner, a 20-year-old Caucasian male from California, leads a woman behind a dumpster and rapes her while she's unconscious. He receives 6 months in jail, 3 months with good behavior. The judge went on to say, prison would have a severe impact on him. Aaron Persky, the same judge, tried both of these cases. Let me be crystal clear. The argument is not that Raul should actually receive a more lenient sentence. The argument is that Brock's outcome highlights the huge disparity in the criminal justice system against men of color. Me calling you out on your white privilege is not me playing the blame game. It's not your fault that you're white, but it is your fault if you continue to be indifferent or deny the fact that you have privilege. And for you self-proclaimed non-racists, if you're nonchalant with your friends or family exhibiting racist behavior, such as posting memes with derogatory language targeted at people of color, then you're just as bad as they are, and you're delusional if you feel otherwise. Privilege comes in many forms. I'll use me as an example. I have never had an immense fear of using a public restroom. In fact, it's never crossed my mind. But for some trans individuals, using a public restroom can sometimes be a life or death situation. I highlight my privilege because although I don't have a personal relationship with someone who is trans, I still stand in solidarity with all trans individuals. Yo, son, we talking about Black Lives Matter. You wildin' out. We ain't talking about no guys dressing as girls and girls dressing as guys. No funny son. What the here? According to The Advocate, by October 2016, 23 trans people have been murdered, making 2016 the deadliest on record for the trans community. Almost all victims were people of color, and the vast majority were black trans individuals. Just because someone's life experience isn't congruent with your own doesn't mean that their life matters any less than anyone else's. Black lives matter, all of them. Not just black men like Freddie Gray, black women like Sandra Bland, black boys like Tamir Rice, or black girls like Renisha McBride, but black trans individuals like rae'lynn Thomas.
Por octubre 2016,
By October 2016,
23 trans individuals have been murdered,
making 2016 the deadliest
on record
for the trans community.
Almost all victims were people of color.
The vast majority
for black trans people.
just because someone's life experience
isn't congruent with your own. Solo porque la experiencia de una persona no es igual que la tuya
doesn't mean that their lives matter any less
than anyone else's.
Las vidas negras importan.
All of them.
Not just black men like Philando Castile.
Black women like Deborah Danner.
black boys like Tamir Rice.
Or black girls like Ayanna Jones.
But also black trans women
Like Goddess Diamond.
Black Lives Matter.